Let's not talk about that now, Aaron. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Urban Platform. Today we're reporting some news. Scandalous, right, Aaron?
Scandal. Mo, when was the last time you used the word scandal?
Definitely throughout university, bro. I said it a few times for a few situations. Even doing stage up with Melanie and Nick, like definitely. There were a lot of moments.
When Mo's involved, it's a scandal. That's what he's saying.
So Mo's the
Guilty.
one who makes it a scandal. Got it. Okay.
Aaron, watch out.
Oh, too bad it's not Scandal Mo. No, I
I'm
like
probably
that
gonna change
one.
my username to that. Okay, so guys, in this article, we had a lot of drama that kicked off between the city and the developer. Now, Aaron, do you want to give some context to the viewers about what this article was about within a few sentences? And then we'll go
Before we do that,
about
I do want to take some time to introduce the two guests that we have on.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you.
We should probably do that.
Fine.
So,
Fine.
First, I'm going to let Nick say a few things about himself. Nick, you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Well, I'm Nick. I'm Concordia student still, econ major, or specialization, I guess. Not much to say about myself. I've been on the other podcast, that 2-hour-long one, where we just kind of ranted about the Zoom University. So, I'm out here making my second appearance, talking about, the 6 towers, the whole scandal of the social housing. It's actually an interesting topic for me because it has to do with it's not really econ, but it's more about the whole monetary situation where it's like, what would you rather lose? Like, you rather spend more money to do the right thing or spend less money, but at least you profit in the end?
For sure. And that's the great thing about planning. It's not only related to planning, you could literally find anything and it could be related to anything. And Melanie, you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Okay, hi. My name is Melanie. I'm a nurse at the Children's Hospital, which is apparently relevant to this, but why not?
So yeah, you're probably wondering what topic we're doing. And also, Melanie, shout out to you for being a nurse during these times. So thank you for that. And to all the nurses who listen to our podcast. I doubt there's many, but I hope that you are working hard. Well, I don't hope that you're working hard. I want to say thank you for working hard and for putting our lives before your own. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and just a quick shout out I want to give about Melanie and Nick. I've known them since Sage Up, so for like 4 or 5 years now. Some of my really, really close friends. I met Melanie through one of my other friends, where we essentially roasted him together. So that's how we started kicking off our relationship.
A beautiful Nick, relationship.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It's exactly. And Nick,
it's the same way.
Same way. Wait, did we roast somebody, Nick, or like?
You know who we roasted.
Oh yeah, actually, I know who we roasted. Okay, we're not going to take any names, just out of respect here. But guys, thank you so much for joining the roundtable discussion. This is actually a new series that I wanted to begin by examining articles, examining issues, current events, whatever you want to call them, and just go over them with you guys, add to the audience, get different perspectives. So yeah, and I hope to see you guys as regulars in the podcast for whatever discussions we have in place for the future.
I already feel like a regular.
Yeah, ever since that last episode, man, you've been, people asked about you, Nick.
Thank you.
A lot of good inquiries, so yeah.
So what exactly are we discussing here though, Are we just talking
so I'm going to
about,
break down the topic a little. As Mo referred to, it is a scandal, and we'll get into why it's a scandal first. And you're like, what the hell is he talking about? What's scandal now in Montreal? So yes, we're talking about a Montreal development project. It's referred to as the Children's Development, or I've heard other names been thrown out. That project over there, that stupidity. Oh, it's still not done yet.
Like many other projects.
Like many other projects. What it is, it's basically corner of Rene Levesque and Atwater, where the former Children's Hospital was, since it has been moved to the MUHC, which is a whole other topic in itself. And the land was left vacated. Well, the building was left on the land since it has been demolished, and there are plans for 6 new towers to go up, including an elderly home, 6 residential towers, and high-end luxury condominiums. So that's a little bit about the project, and I think it was vacated 15 years ago. Anybody know the exact timeline?
I don't remember if they even mentioned it in the article, but if they did, I don't remember exactly.
Yeah,
now.
Aaron, I don't think it was mentioned. Even I read the article again before we got on this. And I'll just add on some of the components of the mixed development that was proposed, adding on to Aaron's point. So $400 million development first. 174 social housing units were promised, along with high-rise developments, 1,000 rental and condo units in these developments, an enlarged park, community center, library, auditorium. And essentially, the average rent of this area is $1,200 per month in the Peter McGill neighborhood. This whole land of the hospital was sold for $25 million. Okay, and the private buyer bought the hospital land for half the appraised value. So it's actually worth more than 25 million, this land. And essentially the community was extremely excited for this project just because it had the social housing component to it, 174 units. And I'll mention the stakeholders quickly that were involved in this project or were mentioned in the article. So Maurice Chapdelaine, project manager with the Peter McGill Community Council. Her group is calling for a public inquiry into what happened to the social housing unit at the old Montreal Children's Hospital. And community groups who were excited about the social housing units were left confused when the plans were just eradicated. And Philip Karub's company, High Rise Montreal HRM, and Devimco Immobilier. So there was a lot of drama that occurred with this project.
And I want to add one other major player. It is a City of Montreal project. It is in the city of Montreal, especially in the heart of the city. So like literally corner and intersection of Westmount and Montreal. So it is also involving the City of Montreal as a stakeholder. And Devimco is very scandalous, very notorious for doing a bunch of things on Montreal skyline. So fun other fact, this site has been vacated for 5 years. So the old Children's Hospital moved to the MUHC 6 years ago, May 24th, 2015. So since then it has been vacated and there have been plans to develop since the MUHC was announced.
Yeah, and essentially the drama alert of this whole article was towards the end when it spoke about HRM versus the city. So, and this is where I want to hear some of your comments, right? So what are your initial reactions to it, Nick? Starting off with you.
Well, I don't remember the person that was arguing with the mayor. I think his name was sorry, what was his name you said?
Philip Karub.
I just want to, because I don't want to butcher his name. I just want to recheck.
I'm just pronouncing it the best I can. It's all good.
Because I'm not sure if it's that guy exactly. Because I know his name started with a K, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. Yeah, Karub, exactly. Yeah. So to me, like I was reading the article, and at first I was like, okay, so from what I understood, like he basically, in order to get whatever his project was signed off, he promised like the government a certain amount of social housing. And like at the beginning of the article, they're talking about it. And it made it seem like he just backed out of his promise. But as we go on forward, it turns out like the government like gave him two options. Either he pays a fine that was like, I don't remember the value, was 6.2 million, 6.235 exactly, or something.
6.2 million, yeah.
But the project itself would cost about 40 million and the government only offered, what was it, 34.5 million.
Exactly.
And that's assuming, there were no complications. That was like at best, And like, you can't blame him for backing out of a project like that when it's actually in his best interest to not do it, because the government's not, like, from what I understand, the government made it sound like they were going to, offer, like they were going to cover it completely. And then at the end, they ended up turning out to like, only cover like a good majority of it, or you could pay the fine. And then after he paid the fine, they tried to like kind of, like I heard they reduced the amount of stories he could build by like 4 or something. But at the end of the day, he still profited. So I don't think he's really to blame, because in his POV, like it's actually a better choice for him, because at the end of the day, it's more profitable for him. Whereas it's actually the city's fault more for not really, trying to actually make it happen. Because at the end of the day, it's the city that wanted to have like more, like the city believed we needed more social housing. but they still tried to find like cuts to, you know, get away with like, you know, trying to mess with him. And at the end of the day, he didn't care. He's a businessman. All they care about is profits. They don't really care about helping people. So
exactly, it's
and
all
the
about
city,
the profits,
obviously the city knows that, but they still tried to do it. So like you can't really blame him when you already know what to expect from him.
Yeah. And Melanie, you have any did you take anything away from this article that is different from what Nick's?
And just a heads up, audience, we will be posting the article below in the comments. So if you're like, what article are they talking about? I want to read it. We will be posting it below the video on YouTube. So just look below.
It'll be in the description. So yeah, Melanie, any initial reactions to this article when you read it that's different from Nick's?
Well, honestly, I kind of like, it was mainly the same points as Nick. It's kind of like, you know, the guy says basically that I don't know why they're complaining. I had my initial goal of like tripling my money. And whereas he's not necessarily as concerned about being the dutiful citizen who wants to have like social housing for everybody. And it's kind of like, okay, so why did the city agree with that and just like let it go by when they had those promises and a contract with, you know, the other stakeholders? But I essentially agree with Nick on that. You can't really blame the guy himself, although kind of like it kind of sucks, but in the end he's just going after his own objectives.
Yeah, and you know, I'll add on to something about this is he described how he kept going back and forth with the city, and now that's one thing I personally experienced when dealing with the city in terms of raising a development project and proposing a development project. So they take a while to get back to you, and they demand a lot. Like essentially the way I've heard developers describe it that I know are like, they just don't let you work. They waste a lot of time. And I felt like he felt the same exact way when reading this article. And it didn't help that Valerie actually smeared his name in public. You guys read that part?
Yeah.
That's what I found a little bit. I think that she took it a bit too far-fetched there, if you want my honest opinion. Being like, he didn't oblige to a social contract. But
yeah, I mean, to be fair, he did like say like that even though the social housing was probably not going to end up happening, he did try to negotiate like other plans for, you know, I think one of the options were also like housing for students and stuff like that.
Exactly.
But the city didn't really like, you know, to them, they were not concerned. Once the social housing was off, to them, it was like, oh, he didn't follow his contract. And then it was like, oh, like he's the bad guy in this situation. And now apparently there's like a lawsuit going on like in it too. And honestly, I don't think the city's gonna win the lawsuit because it is true. Like not only did he didn't follow his contract, sure, but he did pay his fine.
Yeah.
So here it's already finished. You know, like there's nothing left the city can really do to him.
Yeah.
Like and he tried to renegotiate. So
that begs me to ask, what are your takes on why is the city getting involved in the first place? Why is the city committing $34 million other than social housing? Is there another reason why you think they're getting involved, or what are your takes on that?
I mean, to me, I always treat like cities or even like states, provinces as like, at the end of the day, they're like kind of like businesses because they want to minimize their revenue, obviously, government revenue. So like to them, they're trying to like, I guess they were trying to get away with being able to spend less money because they assumed that, oh, he signed a contract, he's just going to oblige to it. And when that didn't end up working out, they kind of felt like, oh, so you know what? Let's try to like try to, I guess, ruin his reputation or something, which obviously he doesn't care about. To him, it's really just making money. And I guess it's kind of like, I don't want to say the city was wrong for trying to, you know, minimize their spend. Obviously, like the money has to come from somewhere. So if they're spending more money on projects like these, obviously it could increase taxes, which is not necessarily best for the people, especially in Quebec, which the taxes are already high. But at the same time, I feel like if you want to like fix a problem, and in this context, obviously it's social housing, you say there's a need for social housing, I feel like you gotta try your best to work with these people and not like be quick to like, you know, pull the plug on the project and take it to court or something, you know, if it's an actual issue that the municipal government cares about, why are they so quick to like take it to court? You know, why don't they try to work something out? Like I feel like this whole whole argument between Karub and the mayor was like just like they had one negotiation, and then Karub tried to renegotiate, and the mayor said no. The contract is very like, you know, it's implied it's strict, and you didn't follow it. So to me, I'm thinking like, do they really care about the social housing? Like here, like if you didn't try to fix it, like, do you really care about the issue? Or are you really just trying to, you know, minimize your spending and try to get away with like, you know, like get away with minimizing spending and under a contract? And it didn't work out for them. So
I mean, like, it's kind of like pointing fingers, and the fact I don't agree on the fact that like, oh, he doesn't care about his reputation. I mean, he is a businessman. It is all often like based on reputation. So smearing his name is not a professional way to deal with this situation, I would say. But I mean, if the city was like so involved in representing the community needs and like do the social housing, they wouldn't just like sell it under the strict contract just to make like rules so strict that it's like obviously going to be pretty like easy to break it.
but wait, did the city sell the, I thought it was the university that sold it.
Yeah, so it was university land, but the thing is, historically, this is an important part of the city. It was the western, like Cabot Square is nearby, and it's the westernmost part of the downtown core before Westmount. And with the investments that are happening, particularly at Atwater Metro right now, and the whole revamping of the Forum and the Place Alexis Neon, like it is a strategic area, and that's why the city kind of wants to get involved. And the other thing is, originally this project did call for social housing. That's still up in the air. But one of the big things that was actually proposed in this project is a school. In the downtown core, like if you're going between, say, like Saint Laurent and even Atwater, there's one school in the area, right? And this is even after they added Griffintown. But this area, the Children's Hospital, was supposed to house a school as well. And that's why the city wanted to promote the development of the school. But now the school has been canceled and not being built by the developer.
To me, I just really think that the city has too much like they trust these developers too much. Like they think that they're always gonna make the decision that's best socially, like the ones that benefit the population most. When in reality, it's just what's gonna be best for them at the end of the day. Like I mean, personally, I wouldn't have changed anything if I was Karub, honestly. Like if I felt like the city was trying to like mess with our arrangement, I'd say finish. I'll just, you know, do whatever is most profitable for me and pay my fine. At the end of the day, it's the city that gets hurt more from this because it was their plan to like, you know, they signed it off based on their like that arranged agreement, and I still get away with, you know, I still have that signature even though I didn't follow my initial contract, and I just paid the fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
go ahead, Aaron.
Go ahead, Mo.
Okay.
The other thing is with developers, look at Karub. He owns a company called High Rise, but there's High Rise Montreal, and his projects are oriented towards luxury hotel brands,
Exactly.
or in Miami, right, which isn't necessarily like a low income neighborhood. It's relatively pricey there. When you're asking these developers, whether it be High Rise, which is headed by Karub, or you ask the Vimco, their specialty is not in low income or social housing. So when the city asks them to do this, they're like, yeah, we don't really have an expertise in this at all. We just built a hotel in Miami. You want us to build social housing? We don't know how to do that. And I think that's one of the big problems in Montreal.
I'll tell you one thing about developers and contractors, right? If they notice that they have to develop something along the lines that is more of a step down in terms of infrastructure, they're going to happily take on that project and agree to do it. Now, what I find interesting is this is something that surprised me personally. I was surprised that the community was happy with 174 units just in comparison with the amount of rental condominiums.
I was thinking the same thing.
Right?
I was thinking the same thing.
So it was, wait, 174 out of how many again?
Dude, 1,000?
What?
Yeah, it was like there was 1,000 units, and only like
Yeah.
I think it was 174 of them were like only gonna be for social housing.
Yep.
Okay, so look, it's still 17%, which is higher than 0.
Definitely.
I say that because like traditionally Montreal has 0 for this, so 17 is still relatively higher, and it goes along with some of the plans that the city is like kind of imposing, which is the 20-20-20 plan, where it's 20% affordable, 20% social, 20% family housing for
Okay.
any given development. So it like closely matches those numbers, but
Yeah, and I guess you're right about indicating 17% there, because also if we take into account, which I didn't really think of until now, was the community center being built, the enlarged park, auditorium, library, which are essential services that a lot of community members do, like from what we studied. Now, I had another question. I was just confused about, so you know the project manager that I mentioned earlier, that is mentioned also in the beginning of the article, Maurice Chapdelaine. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing her name incorrectly, but
None. Yeah.
so
Okay.
what is her role in this project? Like, what exactly was her role? Did she have a role in this project, or is she just somebody who's speaking on behalf for
I'm
the
sure
article?
she had a role. I'm not sure if the article really went in depth of what her initial role was.
As project manager of the Peter McGill Community Council.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm not sure
does she
what
have any
that
ties with this
entails.
actual project, or no?
so here's the thing about project managers. Often they're managing multiple projects at once. Um, Especially like the Peter McGill Institute is a community group in Montreal, if I'm not mistaken, that deals with social and affordable housing throughout the city. Not only for the Atwater development, but also in places like the McGill Ghetto. So I don't think they have a specific role, and they don't really have to mention it. It's just project
I guess it's
manager.
just the title, really.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, because you know the reason I was asking was because if she had any ties with this project, and she's making the statement that, oh, there needs to be a public inquiry of what happened. You know, we have to like set a meeting up. She mentioned that in the beginning of the article,
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'm like, wait, like if I was assuming she was involved just because they were talking about the project in itself in the whole article, right? So my question is, what was your role in this project? Were you, if she was actually involved in the project, what happened according to your perspective?
Okay, here's the thing. It's
Yeah.
a community council. Oftentimes, when you're talking about the Vimco or bigger companies, you're ignoring these community councils.
That is true.
They're
Like
not
they're yeah,
involved.
exactly.
They're not a
They're not
stakeholder.
in the like they're not getting told like everything that's going on. Like it's, I mean, at the end of the day, like you can't really like I don't think she's at fault personally. I think it's really, to me, it's really like an issue between the developer and the actual government. And these small people are kind of left out.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think that's what the big underlying issue is here. Who's to blame? Well, the citizens weren't at the table, so they can't decide between whether it's the government or it's the developers, however many there are.
I mean,
so yeah, go ahead, Nick.
No, you can go.
No, it was just a general question. I can save it for after. I want to hear your point.
Well, personally, I think it's tough to say, honestly, because at the end of the day, I think both the ideas behind this were like the government trying to minimize their costs and Karub just trying to maximize his profits. He figured, like, you know, if the government's not going to cut, like, I'm sure he didn't, like, when it comes, like, the developers didn't just, like, see $34.5 million and they were like, nah, I'm not going to do it. You know, I'm sure there was, like, a whole, like, you know, like, they, like, really, like, evaluated, like, all the potential outcomes and stuff with this project, and like if that was really going to be enough, or was it worth for them just to pay like I think it was 700 or 800 more, like thousand more dollars, and get fined, and then just turn whatever's left into, you know, more high-rise units. So I don't want to say like I don't want to say the government's to blame or Carib's to be blamed, because at the end of the day they were just both doing what they thought would benefit them the most, you know.
Yeah, and
but I don't think. But one thing I want to say before I
Yeah.
I let Mo go real quick is I don't think the way the mayor handled the situation was the best.
Yes, I agree. Okay. It was mentioned in the article that they had multiple meetings back and forth between Krug and the city. Something had to go wrong in these meetings that we just don't know about.
I'm
I
sure,
think
yeah.
a ton of miscommunication or one end of the bargain not being met. I'm not sure. And the fact, and what really solidifies that thought for me is when he mentions at the end, he's like, you know what? I will build these social housing units for free if Valerie steps down, resigns. So something happened internally.
Well, the big thing about that is the fact that Valerie tried to smear his name too, though.
Yeah.
Something
At that point,
happened,
it's like becoming like a personal thing.
dude. Yeah,
like to him,
petty.
it's like, you know what, like if you like, because at the end of the day, like, you know what, he's a businessman, and she's making it like personal, like as if he's not like you gotta understand when you're working with people like who are businessmen, developers or whatever, they're trying to maximize profit, and she's treating it as if he's like some sort of villain in the story, when in reality he's just doing like what benefits him the most. Exactly, he's just doing his job, and Valerie took that personal. She's like, oh, you didn't want to follow the agreement, you're not a good guy. And then like to him it's like, wow, okay, like what the, like you're a mayor, you're supposed to be like, unbiased, you're supposed to kind of remain, objective in the whole situation, whereas that's not the case.
Okay, and I guess this goes on to my final question is, if you guys were part of this process, who do you think, first part of the question, who do you think should be more responsible for this project? Do you think it's between more the city or more the developer, right?
Sorry, what was the question?
Who do you think, if this project were to be redone, or we were to go back in time and these issues never actually occurred, who do you put more responsible for the undergoing of the project? More on the developer's end or more on the city's end? It's like, and I don't want any answers being like, oh, 50-50, it should be divided.
No, I get what you're saying, but I like because I think, wouldn't it make more sense for it to be on the developer's end? Didn't the developer, like, isn't it his investment at the end of the day?
That's his job, but like, I don't know, it's in the city, like if they make the agreement, they should put like standards. No,
but from what I understand with like specific things like this, is the only way the city can really get involved is through like by regulating like what actually happens to the actual building itself. But at the end of the day, the like money is the developer's pockets, because it's the developer's investment, right? Because if it was like the city who invested in this and they only had the developer just kind of like fixing the units and in a way that helps the city, that's a different case. But this is like really like it's the developer's money on the line here, and the city is only regulating like what's happening. And the only reason this like the social housing was even a factor is because in order to like get the amount of units they wanted, they had to come to some sort of agreement, right? Because you can't just build as many units as you want. You have to actually like consult the municipal government. So I do believe it's like in the past or even in the future, it's always going to be the developer. But I think if you're going to want, like, the government needs to do a better job at kind of coming to terms with a developer when they want something done,
like asserting the needs of the population.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. It seems like there was a clear demand from the population, but for whatever reason, the population was not and will not and has not been listened to. And I think that's the problem. I don't know if it's on the developer to take on or if it's on the city, but at some point there needs to be more conversations with the community at large. And then you don't have people like the project manager for the Peter McGill Community Coalition or community group asking, well, we don't know what's happening.
I feel like they should at least be informed on the situation as well. Again, this is more toward this is more towards the government, not like keeping them in the loop, because obviously the developers like don't have any emotional attachment to these communities. Like to them, it's just finish this job, move to the next.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's definitely on the
portfolio project.
Like the government needs to kind of keep everyone informed. To me, this whole situation seemed like just like it just seemed personal more than it was like for trying to fight for the people. And I can't tell you exactly why it felt personal. Like just like the emotions on both sides made it felt personal. I don't know what happened, obviously, between them, the two.
Well, like when you're name calling, I think it gets personal,
Yeah,
and then saying like,
Of course.
"Oh, I want you to resign." It's definitely personal at that point.
but
Like,
but what I
you
mean
did
is
something
like,
wrong. I want you to resign.
yeah, but what I mean is like it's obviously personal, but I'm saying is like we don't know why it got personal at the end of the day, you know? Like we just know like kind of like
Hearing his
what's on
name
the
is not
surface.
personal.
Dude, I
No,
want to
no,
know
I
why.
say we don't know why it got personal, obviously, because we only know what happened on the surface, you know? Like they had a deal, they met a couple of times, the deal didn't work out, he just paid the fine. And now there's like a lawsuit that's going on or something.
I mean, it's also for her to save face by her saying like, oh, like this is his thing because he doesn't want to meet the needs of the population. She's the one that looks good, right?
Oh, but nah, like when the government starts, the thing is when the government starts calling like starts kind of saying that this person's a bad guy, that person's a bad guy, these people don't care about the population. That I mean, obviously, no business really cares about the needs of the population. It's a business. It's not like,
But
you know, a
it's easier for
charity.
people to blame and like an
Yeah, yeah,
image.
it's easy
Yeah.
to blame, but blame does will only get you so far. But the fact that Valerie is going beyond the blame and trying to, you know, like like trying to actually ruin what's happening, like trying to mess with his development is just different. You know, like I mean, like I said, I don't know what happened between the two of them, but obviously something did happen beyond just the contract, and it's going to be tough to say who's really, you know, at fault, because unless we know what happened in closed doors, we just don't know.
At the end of the
Yeah,
day,
but
man.
I think no matter what, you're gonna end up having these conflicts no matter what project, right? Like, yes, it's happening right now with Children's, but it's happening with like every single station with the REM. It's happening like any development project, like the Bay downtown. It's all the same thing. So what could we do to prevent this from happening? And I guess that's more broad questions, but what
Yeah,
would allow society to
I
get
mean,
to a point where this isn't
it's
happening and this isn't the scandals we're talking about?
well, to be fair, there's not much we can do because it's a lose-lose. Either the government decides to spend more, or these developers find it in their heart to help the population, which is both not something that it's not realistic. You know, you can't expect like someone to have a change of mind, you know, put people over profits, and you can't expect the government to just, I mean, you can probably, but they're gonna find a way to like like if they decide to increase their spending, it's not coming out of their own pockets. Obviously, it's gonna increase tax, it's gonna come from somewhere. So it's there's not really a way to fix these issues. It's just that I mean, yeah, I don't know how the issues could resolve.
Okay. I'm gonna add on to this. Now, I think the one way that these issues could be not completely resolved, but could be limited in happening is like, and I've talked to Aaron about this multiple times, where I think an urban planner's role in this case is being the person in between the city and the developer, you know, trying to help negotiate the standards, come to a middle ground, and
Be the
successfully
middleman.
and efficiently execute the project. Now, my question is, who are the head urbanists that were, because there's always a head urbanist who's ensuring that zoning bylaws are being met, that the building standards are being required, and all that good stuff. I wonder what role they played in this whole development scheme. And I know they come more from the city's end, but even coming from the city's end, they need to try to facilitate that in between person for the overall interaction. So I guess my first question would be like, what were the head urbanists doing there? What was the urban planning department doing there? Was there even a department involved in urban planning? I have no idea. But I think that's
Mo,
where
what do you
my
want? Like, you want a title, you want for every single project a description of each person's roles, like attended meeting September 22nd, 2020. Partook in workshop on this topic at this time, participated in this brainstorming session. Is that what we need?
if that's what it takes to get things running smoothly, where we have to ensure that everyone involved in the stakeholder meeting actually plays a role in the project and is playing the role properly, even if you have to go announcing their names before the meeting starts, dude, we got to do it properly, right? Like
Well,
at
honestly,
this point,
unless honestly, unless they're financially involved in any way, I don't think that would be a realistic situation.
Yeah, me neither.
Because because like you can't just have every person involved in the project. Like I'm not gonna say like everybody, but I mean like everybody that's like in a manager position involved in these meetings, because at the end of the day, whether the building, like whether the development happens or not, it doesn't really affect them.
Okay, what about the community? Like, what about the community groups and community representatives
again, it doesn't
who were
affect
part of the social housing unit development?
No, again, it doesn't affect them financially, because at the like you gotta understand, this whole dispute was a financial dispute. This was not about, like, the community can't really have a say in this, because
unless they were paying for anything. The only
exactly, if the community was paying for the social housing, then yes, okay, I completely agree with you, but they weren't. At the end of the day, the people that were responsible for paying for the social housing was the government. And I guess that's why these meetings actually happened between the developers and the government. It's about how much the government was willing to pay, and like if they were not willing to pay, what can we like change these social housing into like different ways to help the population? Because I don't think if you had like anybody, like extra people in the meeting, it would change the outcome that happened here. Because this outcome was not to do with like this outcome was really to do with the financial issues here.
Yeah, I don't think it has to do with who is sitting in what chair and what meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Nick makes a good point.
So is it more about like what was like outlined in the contract then?
No, the contract was satisfied here, because I didn't like, if he didn't follow the social housing part of the contract, he just paid a fine. Yeah, obviously, they did determine whether it was more beneficial to pay the fine or just pay the extra, I think it was $5.5 million for the social housing. They chose to pay the fine.
Yeah, but here's the thing with the contract. The contract was signed in 2015. So before Valerie Plante was elected, right? So any contract that has been signed or will be signed in the next month or two, or has been signed in the last year, could be completely in the garbage because somebody else gets elected in November, right? Or Valerie Plante's team could get reelected. But otherwise, it's just like a period of uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen next.
I mean, I think this is what the lawsuit has to do with it at this point. Like, obviously, like, because it gotten personal, I don't think Valerie would sign anything related to this project. And I think that's
like they're not allowed to sign anything at this point in like the campaign or at this point.
No, I mean, like, if she were to get re-signed, I don't think I would resign that. If she were to get reelected, I don't think she would move forward with this project. And I think that's a big issue here, because now the developers feeling like this is not because of like some sort of, this is not a like something that has been well thought out and is unbiased and objective. This is getting like personal to him, and if he feels that way, he's gonna find a way to get around it too.
So essentially, this was a personal petty this was basically a huge development project turned into drama, making it all personal. And I guess the result you have.
I guess the big issue here is because the government, like the mayor wasn't able to get this like agreement going the way it was supposed to get initially going. She kind of feels like she's like responsible for it, and like if she doesn't find a way to find a way to blame the developer, people are going to think that this was her fault,
and then she won't get reelected, and then
exactly like she'll just like, people will put their trust in her anymore, really. So she's finding ways to make it seem like the developers were like the villains in the story, which honestly, it doesn't matter who did what. Like, there's no real villain in the story. I guess both sides had their best interests in mind, and it just didn't happen to work out.
Yeah.
But obviously, the people are gonna look for a scapegoat. So
of course.
Welcome to politics.
Yeah, it's political at the end of the day. She has to defend her position. I get that. You don't want her name to be smeared as well.
Yeah, but defending your position can put you in a really bad place when it starts to get a little what's the word I'm looking for? Like when you get the whole court involved and stuff, it just makes it worse.
It'll go down quietly. Just watch.
It might go down quietly. People are gonna still be looking for someone to blame.
Yeah, it's gonna go down quietly, and then it's gonna be on to the next project.
People are gonna still be talking about it. They're gonna be like, "What happened?" and then everyone's
Those
gonna be like, you cannot
174
disclose it.
units that never happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it's kind of just the way it goes. I mean, obviously, though, the real losers in this battle are the people, the population, because at the end of the day, they were the ones that were supposed to benefit, and they didn't benefit at all. Whether win or lose, they're the ones who are, at loss here.
Essentially, yeah. So I think this concludes the article discussion. Aaron, Melanie, do you guys have any last points you guys want to make before we end off?
That's pretty much it.
Aaron, anything?
I don't have anything else to add.
Awesome.
It's all been said.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for participating in the roundtable discussion. I had a great time going over this article, reading it, making points, and I love some of the points you guys made. And hopefully this is a learning lesson for future development. I don't know how people are going to take this. I don't know how developers are going to take this in the future, or cities. Will they change their methods once it comes to negotiating with the developer?
Yeah,
we don't know.
there and have a logbook and make sure that everybody signs into every
To
single
me,
meeting.
honestly, the thing
No,
is,
don't do that.
it's gonna be like, at the end of the day, it's gonna be about finding like a middle ground in these negotiations. Like some developments might find their middle ground, where both sides are gonna be satisfied. This one just happened to be one that didn't. That's all it is.
Developers would want to get involved again and go through this whole hassle.
The developers, it's best for them, because them not following their agreements can be sometimes a lot more profitable, like especially in this case. Like, remember, this development plan would have never got signed off if the social housing was never brought up.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, so Aaron, you and I are gonna have to log names in the future for development projects, okay? That's a learning lesson from here, man. Okay, thank you guys for listening. If you guys have any comments or questions about the article, like Aaron said earlier, the article will be posted in the description, and we will see you on the next roundtable discussion. Thank you very much.
See you next time on the platform.